Hello friends, a very warm welcome to another session on a topic for the preparation of CSAT. So today's topic is percentage. Now this topic is of prime importance from the point of view of questions which are asked on percentages. The fundamentals are used almost everywhere, let us say profit and loss, simple interest, compound interest, partnership, and not to forget data interpretation. So today we will look at the very basics and the shortcuts to decrease the length of time while performing calculations and a variety of questions that have appeared in the previous year papers as well as other examinations of similar stature. So let's begin with the very basic. First of all, what is percentage? Now if I divide the word percent into two parts, it would become percent. Per means for each, and cent, which is also found in century, would mean 100. So percentage or percent would mean for each 100. Now the symbol for percent is as is indicated here. You're very much aware of this. Now whenever you see X percent, it would mean X for each 100. So it would be represented by X by 100. Now similarly, 20% is 20 by 100, 50% is 50 by 100, 75% is 75 by 100. So 75 per cent. So 75% can be written as 75 per cent. Now this is the very basic of representing a figure which is given in percent. Now we are given certain statements as are visible here, like 20 is what percent of 50. Now how do you convert it into mathematical form? It's very simple. Just go by the statement. 20 stands for equal to what is an unknown. So it is X. Percent per cent of means multiplication, and we get a 50. So if you need to interpret or convert these statements into mathematical notation, this is how you should work out. Now this obviously you know is 20 out of 50 is what percent. This is what we will do to find out that how much part of 50, that how much is 20 as a part of 50 when compared with total parts being 100. So goes by 2. This you know is 40%. So 20 is 40% of 50, which means 20 out of 50 is same as 40 out of 100. Now look at this statement. How much is 40% of 50? Now how much is an unknown? So we will take it as X is equal to 40%. 40% of 50. So once again we reduce this. 40 goes by 2 as 20. So 40% of 50 is 20. Now 20 is 40% of what? So 20 is 40% of what? So simply we have converted these statements into mathematical notation. So once again, this you know would become X is equal to 20 by 40 into 100. Goes by 2, goes by 50. So X is 50. So 20 is 40% of 50. Now I've used the same figures here, that is 20, 50 and 40%. And using these three figures, we have come up with three statements just to know the very method that we can transform these statements into mathematical notations. Now, if A is X% more or less than B, what is meant by this? If it is given to you that if A is 25% more than B, it may be given to you that A is 25% more than B. In such a case, you can always write A as 1.25 times B. So directly you can multiply B with 1.25. It may be given to you that A is 25% less than B. Then you can write this expression as A is 0.75 times B. Now, it means what? See, A here is nothing, but it is 100 plus more percent or minus less percent by 100 into B. Now, let us take the first case, that is 25% more. In such a case, A will become 125 by 100 into B, which is 1.25 times B. So it is 25% more. So we will add 25 to 100. It is 25% less. In such a case, A is equal to 100 minus less percent, as you can see here. So 100 minus 25%, because A is 25% lesser than B. So it shall become 75 by 100 into B, which is 0.75 times B. So in short, to reach this, you can directly write it as A is equal to 1 plus 0 point more percent or 1 minus 0 point less percent into B. Now it is similar to this, only thing is that we have taken, instead of 100 we have taken 1. Why? Because 100 by 100 is going to be 1, and this more or less percent by 100 is going to be point more percent or point less percent figure which is given to us here. So now if you see, 25% more is nothing but 1 plus more percent. That is 1 plus point more percent. That is 1 plus 0.25, which shall become 1.25 times B. So this is what we will get A as. So if A is 25% less than B, then A becomes 1 minus point less percent, and that is 25. So 1 minus 0.25 again would give us a 0.75 times B. Now it is very simple to calculate 1.25 times and 0.75 times, as we would see in the next few slides. Alright, now let's have a look at one question here. If A is 25% more than B, then by what percent is B less than A? Now I would first of all take the age-old method, which is obviously obsolete, and we are not going to adopt that. But just for the sake of your understanding, let B be equal to 100. Now as A is 25% more than B, so first of all 25% of B is 25 by 100 into 100. Not required to do that, isn't it so? So which is equal to 25. So A will become 25% more than B, that is 125. Now the question is, then by what percent is B less than A? Now the difference between A and B is A minus B, which is 25. 125 minus 100. B is less than A by, let us say B is less than A by 25 by 125 into 100. What is this 125? This is A. What is this 25? This is A minus B. And why did we take A in the denominator? Very simple principle. Please register it properly into your mind, that whichever quantity comes after than The word than is there, B less than A. So the quantity or value A will come in the denominator. So this goes by 5. So it is 100 by 5, which is 20%. I'm pretty sure that some of you, when you read this question, the very first answer that came to your mind was 25%. If A is 25% more than B, then B is 25% less than A, which is incorrect. And that is because when you say A is 25% more than B, B is a smaller figure, which is 100. Then by what percent is B less than A? A is a larger value, that is 125. So that is why there would be a difference. Now, obviously, we are not going to adopt this method to solve the question. Now here, most important thing is you should know the percentage to fraction conversion of various percentage values. Like 25% we know is 1 by 4. 25 by 100. 20% we know is 1 by 5. 20 by 100. 33.33% we know is 1 by 3. 33.33 divided by 100 is 1/3. 40%, 2 by 5. Quite simple. If 20%, double of 20% is 40%, so double of 1 by 5 is 2 by 5. 50%, that is 50 by 100. So 1 by 2. So you people are quite aware of these conversions here. Now when you say A is 25% more than B, you can always say A is 1.25 times B, as we learned in the last slide. Now let me take the case of 25%. Well, 25% you know is 1 by 4. So 125% will be, well, please add the denominator to the numerator. So it becomes 1 plus 4 by 4, which is 5 by 4. Because this one indicates 100 and this 4 here indicates 25%. So similarly, if you had 20%, let us say, which you know is 1 by 5, and you wanted to find out 120%. So just add the denominator to the numerator. So it would become 1 plus 5 by 5, that is 6 by 5. Now 120% is equal to 1.2. 120%, 120 by 100, which is 1.2. 125% becomes 1.25. 125%, 125 by 100 will be 1.25. So simply, when you say A is equal to 1.25 times B, it means that A is equal to 5 by 4 times B. So by what percent is B less than A? Now, this was because you needed to find out for more than. For less than, a simple thing that you have to do here is that B is 4 by 5 times A, which is also 0.80 times A. Now, 0.80 is how much less than 1? Or let us say 80% of A. If B is 80% of A, in that case, B is equal to 100 minus 20 by 100 times of A. Now this is less percent. What is this? This is less percent. So B is 20% less than A. So we have seen two methods here. Now the third one is an extension of the second method which I have shown you here. In such kind of questions, how are you supposed to solve them during the examination? Within no time. So if A, let us say, is 25% more than B. So 25% is what? It is 1 by 4. And you want to find out by what percent is B less than A, then in this case, just add the numerator to the denominator. When A is X percent more than B, then B will be what percent less than A. In such kind of questions, find out that X percent, convert it into fraction. This X percent here is 25%, convert it into fraction, 1 by 4, add the numerator to the denominator. So what you get here is 1 by 5. Now 1 by 5 converted into percentage value, which is 20%. So here now you can say that B is 20% less than A. So much faster approach. Now let's have a look at another question. We will solve this question during the examination. If A is 50% more than B, then by what percent is B less than A? 50% is 1 by 2. Add the numerator to the denominator. It becomes 1 by 3. 1 by 3 is 33.33%. That is our answer. So if A is 50% more than B, then B is 33.33% less than A. As simple as that. Let's take up another question. If A is 20% less than B, then by what percent is B more than A? Now, in the previous question, we went from A being more than B, and then we needed to find out by what percent is B less than A. Whereas in this question, A is already by some percent less than B, and we have to find out by what percent is B more than A. So, let me sum it up. If A is X percent more than B, then B will be Y percent less than A, such that X will always be greater than Y percent. Remember that. So when you say less than, then Y is lesser than X. And that is why if A is 25% more than B, then B is 20% less than A. If A is 50% more than B, then B is 33.33% less than A. See, 25 is greater than 20, 50% is greater than 33.33. Or let us say that these figures are lesser than the figure of A. So remember that. Now, amongst the choices for such questions, if A is 25% more than B, then B is what percent less than A? In such a case, if there is a choice which has a value more than 25%, it cannot be your answer. Why? Because it has to be less than 25%. So similarly, in a question which says A is 50% more than B, then by what percent B is less than A? So in that case, your answer should be lesser than 50%, which is 33.33%. So that you can eliminate choices as well. Now it is given if A is X percent less than B, as is the question here, then B will be Y percent more than A. In such a case, Y percent is more than X percent. As it says more than A, so this figure needs to be more. I will take examples from here only. See, if A is 25% more than B, then B is 20% less than A. If A is 20% less than B, then B will be 25% more than A. Same thing. And that is a question which is given to us here. Now, how do you solve it? Independent of this concept, because we have already done a question with regard to these two figures, 25% and 20%. Now see, 20% less, anyhow, 20% is 1 by 5. Now 1 by 5 is a fraction. You want to increase its value, then you know that in a fraction, the value of a fraction gets increased if denominator keeps on decreasing. So how would you decrease the denominator? Well, this time you will subtract the numerator from the denominator. So it will become 1 by 5 minus 1, that is 1 by 4, which is 25%. So if A is 20% less than B, then B is 25% more than A. Just the reverse. So when you go from less to more, you go to a figure which has a greater value, or which is more. When you go from more to less, you go to a figure which is lesser in value. Now see, if A is 33.33% less than B, then by what percent is B more than A? So your answer is going to be more than 33.33% for sure. Now 33.33% is 1/3 as a fraction. You want to increase the value of this fraction. You want a figure which is more than this. So what will you do? You will subtract the numerator from the denominator. So it will become 1/3 minus 1. That is 1/2, which is 50%. So if A is 33.33% less than B, then B will be 50% more than A. Now see, we have talked about two pairs here. Which ones? 25% and 20%, 50% and 33.33%. Let us say this is X%. Let us say this is Y%. Now look carefully. If A is 25% more than B, then B is 20% less than A. If A is 50% more than B, then B is 33.33% less than A. Whereas if A is 20% less than B, then B will be 25% more than A. If A is 33.33% less than B, as is the question here, as the question states here, then B will be 50% more than A. So these are pairs. So it would be of great help if at all you memorize these pairs. Now look at this table. If A is X% more than B, then B is Y% less than A. So first let me start with the values that we discussed. If A is 25% more than B, then B is 20% less than A. Simply this is 1/4. You want a lesser quantity, increase the denominator by the numerator. That is, add the numerator to the denominator. And if at all, it would have been the other way around. A is X% less than B, then by what percent is B more than A? You want a more quantity, a greater quantity. Then what would you do? You will increase the value of the fraction. How do you increase the value of a fraction? By decreasing the denominator. And how would you decrease the denominator here? You will decrease the numerator from the denominator. So if the question was that A is X% more than B, so 1/4, you want to make it a smaller fraction, lesser one, because B is Y% less than A. Then in that case, what do? Well, you increase the denominator by adding the numerator to the denominator. So it becomes 1/5, whose percentage equivalent is 20. Now look at the other way around. If B is Y% less than A, by what percent is A more than B? So B is 20% less than A. Let us say it is given. And 20% is 1/5. Then by what percent is A more than B? More, you want to increase this value. It is 1/5 at present. So you would decrease the denominator. And how would you decrease the denominator? Well, go in the opposite direction. It will become 1/5 minus 1. That is, you will subtract the numerator from the denominator, so that it becomes 1/4, which has its percentage equivalent as 25%. Now, similarly, let's have a look at 50. If A is 50% more than B, then by what percent is B less than A? You want a lesser figure. So 50 here is 1/2. Now you want to lessen or decrease the value of this fraction, then you will increase the denominator. So what will happen here? It will become 1/2 plus 1. The numerator will get added here, which is nothing but 1/3, and 1/3 is 33.33%. But if the question is asked to you the other way around, that B is 33.33% less than A, then by what percent is A more than B? Now this is 1 by 3. You want to make it more, you want to increase the value of this fraction. So how do you decrease the value of this fraction? We will subtract the numerator from the denominator. So we will decrease the value of the denominator as 1 by 3 minus 1. Here we are subtracting 1 to get 1 by 2, which is 50%, which is more than 33.33%. Now similarly, 10 is 1 by 10. If A is 10% more than B, then B here will be 1 by 10 plus 1, that is 1 by 11 times, or 9.09% less than A. If A is 20% more, 20% is 1 by 5, then by what percent is B less than A? Less. So you want lesser value of the fraction. And how do you decrease the value of this fraction? By adding the numerator to the denominator. So what do you get? You get a 1 by 6, which is 16.67%. So if A is 33.33% more than B, that is, it is 1/3, then by what percent is B less than A? So this will become 1 by 3 plus 1, that is 1 by 4, which is 25%. A is 40% more than B. What is 40%? 2 by 5. Then by what percent is B less than A? Decrease this. So what do you do that? Well, how do you decrease the value of a fraction? By increasing the denominator. And how do you do that? Well, we will add the numerator to the denominator. So it shall become 2 by 7, which is 28.56%. Out of these, I think you should memorize at least these three pairs. That is, 25% more means 20% less, and the other way around. 20% less means 25% more. Now, 33.33% more means 25% less, and the other way around. 25% less means 33.33% more. 50% more means 33.33% less. Well, remember the process, and if at all you memorize these pairs, and by chance any of these values they are included in the question, then you would be able to solve the question within no time. Now, as you see in the previous slide, I also spoke about the conversions from fraction to percentage and from percentage to fraction. Few fractions for which the percentage equivalent should be memorized and the other way around. Now the list is there in front of you. Many of these you already remember. Like 10% is 1 by 10 and 1 by 10 is 10%. So you already remember. Alright. Then 20% you remember. It is 1 by 5, or 1 by 5 is 20%. You remember that. Then 25% is 1 by 4. 1 by 4 is 25%. 30% is quite simple. 3 by 10 or 3 by 10 is 30%. 33.33% you already remember. It is 1 by 3 or 1 by 3 is 33.33%. 40% we just now discussed. It is 2 by 5 or 2 by 5 is 40%. 50% we discussed, which is 1 by 2 or 1 by 2 half is 50%. And the rest also are quite simple for you to remember. You see, 60% is 3 by 5 or 3 by 5 is 60%. How? Well, 30% is 3 by 10. Double of 30%, 60%. Double of 3 by 10 is 6 by 10. 6 by 10 is 3 by 5. 70% is quite simple. 7 by 10 or 7 by 10 is 70%. 75% is again quite simple. You remember that. It is 3 by 4. 25% is 1 by 4. 25 into 3 is 75. So 1 by 4 into 3 is 3 by 4. So quite simple here. 80% is 4 by 5. Well, if 40% is 2 by 5, double of 40% is 80%, double of 2 by 5 is 4 by 5. So few values are remaining which you need to memorize. One is 8.33%, and that will happen if you remember the value of 16.67%. Now let me show you this. Some percentage values are not given here, and I am including now in this slide. You know, how much is 66.67%? It is 2 by 3. Half of this 66.67% is 33.33%. Right? So half of 2 by 3 will become 1 by 3. Now half of 33.33% is 16.67%. Half of 1 by 3 will be 1 by 6. Now half of 16.67% is 8.33%. And half of 1 by 6 is going to be 1 by 12. So 8.33% here is 1 by 12, or let us say 1 by 12 is 8.33%. So these figures you should remember. Now similarly, let me take down for 100%. 100% is treated as 1. 100% is 1. So half of 100% is 50%. So half of 1 we know is half. Now half of 50% is 25%. So half of half is going to be 1 by 4. Now half of 25% will be 12.5%, and half of 1 by 4 will become 1 by 8. So this is where 12.5% comes into play. It is equal to 1 by 8 as a fraction. And fractional and percentage equivalent of 1 by 8 is 12.5%. Well, 15% should not be a problem. That is 15 by 100. Both the figures, the numerators and denominator 15 and 100, they cancel by 5. So 5 into 3 is 15. 5 into 20 is 100. So 15% is 3 by 20. Similarly, 35%, as you can see here, that is nothing but 35 by 100. Both the values are divisible by 5. So 5 into 7 is 35, and 5 into 20. Now 37.5%, very important figure. Now you remember 12.5% is 1 by 8. Now 3 times 12.5 is 37.5. So 12.5 into 3 is 37.5%. So 1 by 8 into 3 is 3 by 8. So likewise, just try and memorize these percentage values and their fractional equivalents and vice versa. That is fraction value and its percentage equivalent. Alright, with this regard, especially in data interpretation, let us say, if you need to find out how much is 37.5% of 81,624. Well, usually this is what you will do. 81,624 into 37.5 and leave it. Because just looking at it, you find it so tedious. And then you end up saying that calculations were huge. No, you didn't know the shortcut. So if you would have known, as we discussed in the previous slide, that 37.5%, its fraction equivalent is 3 by 8 into 81624. Now, just look at it this way. I changed the places of comma. So 8 is now to divide 81624. Isn't it so simple? 8 ones are 8, 0. 8 twos are 16, 0. 8 threes are 24. Now what are you left with? 3 into 10203. So what do? 3 ones are 3, 3 twos are 6, 3 threes are 9. 30609, period. Now this is how, when you perform these calculations, you would be saving time, be it in data interpretation or be it in any other question, like in compound interest, especially when you have huge calculations. So now I'm giving you the final fraction to percentage conversion starting with 1. We will take the numbers, integer values from 1 to 12 and calculate their percentage equivalents for each of the reciprocal values. By that, what I mean? Let's take the number 1. What is the reciprocal of 1? You know it is 1. That is 100%. Let's talk about 2. Reciprocal 1 by 2. Fraction. Now its percentage equivalent 50%. We already know this. Let's go to 3. Reciprocal 1 by 3, which is 33.33%. Now multiples of this reciprocal 2 by 3, that is double of this, 66.66% or 67%. 4. Reciprocal 1 by 4, that is 25%. Multiples 2 by 4. 2 by 4 is half, that we have already taken. Another one is 3 by 4, which is 75%. Next number is 5. 1 by 5, 20%. 2 by 5, 40%. 3 by 5, 60%. 4 by 5, 80%. So the good thing is we already know these conversions. Move on to 6. 1 by 6. That is going to be half of 1 by 3 here. Isn't it so? And we learned that it is 16.67%. 2 by 6 is 1 by 3. We have already covered that. 3 by 6 is half. We have already covered that. 4 by 6 is 2 by 3. We have already covered that. So another one which is left over here is 5 by 6. 1 by 6 into 5 is 5 by 6. So 16.67% into 5. 16 into 5 is 80. 0.67 times into 5 will be 3.33. So this anyhow is 83.33%. Now look at 7. Now that's very interesting. 1 by 7. You want to find out its percentage value. What do? Well, in case of 7, let us say 1 by 7, you double the numerator. So it becomes 2. Now multiply 7 with 2, you get 14. So what shall we do whenever we have to find out the percentage equivalent of any fraction which has 7 in the denominator? We will double the numerator, multiply it with 7. You get the first 2 digits, that is 14. Then put a decimal mark and then double this 14 so that it becomes 28. So 14.28%. Similarly, 2 by 7. What would you do? Double the numerator. What does it become? 4. Now 7 into 4 is how much? It is 28. Point, double of 28, that is 56%. So 1 by 7 is 7 2s are 14.28%. Double of 14 is 28. 2 by 7, double of 2 is 4. So 7 4s are 28.56%. Double of 28 is 56. 3 by 7, double of 3 is 6. 7 6s are 42. Double of which is 84. So 42.84%. Quite simple. 4 by 7, double of 4 is 8. 7 8s are 56. Double of 56 is 112. Out of 112, the first digit 1 will get carried over. So it will become 57.12%. You can calculate this and find out yourself also. So similarly, 5 by 7. Double of 5 is 10. 7 into 10 is 70. Double of which is 140. The first digit out of 140, that is 1, gets carried over. So it becomes 71.4%. 6 by 7. Double of 6 is 12. 7 into 12, I don't know. Oh well. 12 into 7, we know. So 12 7s are 84. 84, double of that is 168. 1 gets carried over. It becomes 85.68%. Now let us find out for 8. We already saw 1 by 8 is half of 1 by 4. 1 by 4 is 25%. So 1 by 8 shall become 12.5%. 2 by 8 is 1 by 4. We've already taken that. 3 by 8 we recently saw. It is 37.6%. 5%. 4 by 8 is half. 5 by 8, 1 by 8 into 5 times is 5 by 8. 12.5 into 5 times is 62.5%. 12 fives are 60, 5 fives are 25, or 0.5 times, or 0.5 into 5 is 2.5, so 60 plus 2.5 is 62.5. 6 by 8 is 3 by 4, we have taken that. 7 by 8, 1 by 8 into 7 is 7 by 8. 12.5 into 7, 12 sevens are 84. 0.5 into 7 times is 3.5. So it is 87.5%. Let us find out for 9. 1 by 9. That's a wonderful thing. 9 and 11, they go hand in hand. They are best friends. How? Whenever you have a fraction in which 9 is given to you in the denominator, you multiply the numerator with 11. So you get 11.11%. 11.11%. 11 is repeated. So 2 by 9 shall be 22.22%. Now 3 by 9 is 33.33%. And you remember 3 by 9 is 1 by 3. This is also 1 by 3. Yes. So 4 by 9, 5 by 9, you know all these things, right? So 6 by 9 is 66.66%. That you know is 2 by 3. So 8 by 9, 88.88%. Right? So just numerator you have to keep on writing, or multiply it with 11. Write it once and then after decimal repeat that. Well, 10 you already know, so I need not write that. But let me take up 11. I told you that 9 and 11, they go hand in hand. So 1 by 11. Well, when you had 1 by 9, you multiplied the numerator with 11. Right? 2 by 9, you multiplied the numerator with 11. Now when you have 1 by 11, you will multiply the numerator with 9. So it will become 9.09%. Similarly, 2 by 11, multiply 2 with 9, what do you get? 18.18%. Repeat that. So 3 by 11, 9 into 3 is 27, so 27.27%. And likewise, you can always keep on going in this flow. Now look at 12. 1 by 12. Well, 1 by 12 is half of 1 by 6. How much is 1 by 6? 16.67%. 1 by 12 we learned it was 8.33%. 2 by 12, 1 by 6. 3 by 12, 1 by 4. 4 by 12, 1 by 3. 5 by 12. So let's have a look at 5 by 12. It is 5 times. So 8.33 into 5. 8 5s are 40. 0.33 into 5 is 1.67. So it is 41.67%. 6 by 12 is half. 7 by 12. So 8.33 into 7. 8 7s are 56. 0.33 into 7. That is 2.33. So it is 58.33%. 8 by 12, 2 by 3. 9 by 12, 3 by 4. 10 by 12, 5 by 6. We have covered these. Remaining 11 by 12. So 8 into 11 is 88.33 into 11 is 3.33. So it shall become 91.33%. Now why is it that we need to remember these fraction to percentage and percentage to fraction calculations? Well, especially in data interpretation, you could be asked to find out, let us say, 37.5% of 81,624, as we discussed in the previous slide. You could be asked to find out 87.5% of 888. So that is 7 by 8 into 888. 888. They cancel. So 8 divides 888 by 111. So 111 into 7 here will give you a 777. Nothing messy about it. Wherever you are asked to find out 83% or 83.33% or even 83.5% of any value, you can always use the fraction 5 by 6 in place of that 83.33 or 83.5 or 83%. Now by conversion of this percentage value into fraction, your calculations will become much simpler, because denominator of this fraction would definitely cancel the numerator of the value with which you are multiplying this fraction with. Let us say you are asked to find out 42%, 42.5%, 43%, 42.84% of a particular value. You can always equate that value to 3 by 7. That percentage value will become 3 by 7. So by converting these percentage values into fractions, it definitely provides you with ease in calculations. One more wonderful thing which I would like to point out here is, as I told you, 25% is 1 by 4. So 125% will be 5 by 4. That is, you will add the denominator to the numerator. Also, 25% is 1 by 4. So 4% is 1 by 25. You can always interchange these values, provided you have 1 in the numerator. So similarly, 20% is 1 by 5. So 5% will be 1 by 20. You can always interchange here. So these are the things that you must keep in your mind, practice, so that these fractions and their percentage equivalents, these percentage values and their fraction equivalents, they are registered into your mind and you are able to recall them and use them whenever required in a calculation.